Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Mateusz. I am a chemist with an MBA in sports management, but don't worry, you don't have to do any push-ups for Scope 3. I was just a bit undecisive with my studies, but I'm very decisive on driving circularity, full-time at Deloitte and in my free time at Plastics Climate Future. And today it's going to be about monetizing circularity, and especially not circularity as a cost of compliance, but as a growth lever that you can leverage in your P&L. And we will follow a very simple flow, basically commitment, strategy, pricing, market engagement, and try to keep it very practical. So for those of you who are interested, what drives the deals, what kills them, and what makes the premium stick, this is the right session. And I'm very delighted to have this amazing panel here with brilliant minds from different areas of the industry. First of all, let me introduce Amadeus Petzke. He's partner at Deloitte and one of the co-authors of the Monetize CE playbook. And he lives where the value is. And if there is a green premium to catch, he'll find it. Make every CFO happy. Then we have Annika. She is the Circular Economy Business Development Manager for Biobased and atmospheric carbon offerings at Borealis. She also plays and trains ice hockey, of course. She's from Finland. And on the ice and in chemicals, it's all about precision, ISCC+, born renewables, and now atmospheric carbon. Then we have Paula Sanabria. She's Senior Director and responsible for the marketing, commercial development of circular and low carbon solutions at LyondellBasell. And according to her team, she is the velociraptor of sustainability. Means resilience, resourceful, and always evolving in her commitment to shape a greener future. And I actually looked up what is a velociraptor, and it's known for being agile and strategic, and often working in teams and aligning quickly to new challenges. And then we have Frank. Frank is a polymer engineer and a consultant, and he actually turns these circular materials into something that really runs on your line. He has 14 plus years of experience in material consulting, and he's the person you want to consult first before you talk to your OEM. First of all, just by showing your hands, who is already paying a consistent premium for circular and low carbon grades? And who wants to have a premium paid and wants to make it stick? Good. So we will have, hopefully, insights for both parties. Let me start with the first question to Amadeus. What does actually true C-level commitment look like when you're trying to monetize circularity? And what are non-negotiable choices that leadership actually must have to make in order to make it a growth lever and not a cost of compliance?
Yeah, that's a tough one to get started with, of course. Well, monetizing circularity will not work without C-level commitment, right? And what we see in practice working, best is if monetizing circularity, if circularity is defined or becomes a strategic growth pillar, right? If it's just an addendum to the ESG commitments, it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful, right? So treating it as a business, treating it as a growth lever, defining also aggressive targets, and then also putting resources behind, making people then accountable for it. That's the core prerequisite of C-level commitment. Then I would say as a second element, it's also about establishing a culture of taking risks, taking calculated risks. So as we all know, the circular economy is about pushing the boundaries. So we need to find and define pilots, right? Early on use cases that work, even if they probably not pay off at the very beginning, but it requires a certain kind of, let's say, stamina to go after that. And let's say even accept failures, right? Learning from failures, I think my fellow speakers here will probably talk about that. Learning from failures is also an asset that needs to be appreciated. And my final point would be senior leaders are also needed to establish, I would say, new networks of collaboration, ecosystems, right? We're very often talking to our customers, but we are not really talking to our customers. We're talking to the procurement department of our customers. That's typically not the right addressee of establishing a monetizing circularity strategy.
So it's about incentives, it's about courage, and in practical terms. In Monetize you talk about the green premium fatigue and moving from product-centric to customer-centric monetization. What are some of the price and value communication moves, or maybe two, that actually unlock willingness to pay in B2B chemical products that you have seen?
Yeah, the green premium, it's almost like a representative of what's not working, right? You know, if we discuss this with our clients, our diagnostic very often is that we are talking to the wrong people with the wrong message. And if it just boils down to, I have exactly the same product here, same formula, but more expensive, there's rightly so a pushback, right? So we need to be, let's say, better prepared to talk to the right people with the right message. And at the core of it is the true value that the product that we are developing, that we want to bring in the market is actually offering. And it's typically beyond the pure formula, right? It is helping our customers and our customers to access totally new markets, right? To increase, further down the value chain, to increase the shelf price of a certain product because it's suddenly playing in a market that was untapped before, right? And it's about these discoveries that are required to describe the total value of the product that we are offering, right? Also, I mean, of course, CO2 footprint and so on and so forth, all these elements, but it's super, super important to change that mindset and to go out prepared and they have the full value in mind, right? And then maybe if I may add one more thought to it, it's also about, I would say, talked about the C-level commitment and that it's important to find these pilots and these niches and to make them successful, establish partnerships. If you take one thing, away from me today is, if you have something established like that, please go out with pride and talk about that, right? Generate these use cases. Don't keep them for you. Talk to your customers and your customers' customers about the value that this is generating. Try to quantify it. Get others to talk about that joint value created. It will attract others in because they see, okay, there's something happening, right? In our day-to-day consultants' life, we always talk to companies and, on an isolated way, there's always people looking for partners to help them do something, right? And if everyone is looking for a partner, hey, that's the place to connect and build these success stories together.
Great. So from the messaging now to the materials and how these messages stick. Annika, Born Renewables is use ISCC plus as balanced renewable feedstock from waste and different residue streams, and basically drop in with virgin-like performance. What are actually the proof points that most importantly convince the customers? So like, is it LCAs? What are these messages basically? Was it certifications? Is it no change processing claims that you pack into the value of your Born Renewables products?
Thank you, Matt. That's a really good question. And I think it was really a bit touched in a previous speech already, the keyword of value. And value, there's just not one single answer, what is the value? But value depends also on a kind of how the customer perceives and their customer perceives the value. And basically also how the value is perceived depends much on the market, the application, geographical locations where the customer is at, but also their strategy. So what is the value proposition they want to pass forward on their market? And so, yeah, sorry for being like that confusing, but there is not one single answer.
Yeah.
But at Borealis, our work and job and responsibility here is to support our customers with the right documentation, having the right support, the documentation and information in a right, also usable form available to support our customers passing this value proposition forward in the market. And like you mentioned, LCA, is it a drop-in solution? What is the value point? I think the key here is what you also mentioned, the proof of point. So the proof of point needs to be there, and it needs to be reliable and available. And that's basically where the value is coming from, and it's defining like what is the kind of the most highly ranked feature that makes the customer decide to change.
So picking on this, I mean, you have now new technology basically processing e-naphtha from captured CO2 and positioning this as atmospheric carbon alongside, of course, biomass and circular from waste. And now it's pretty new. So what are the early commercialization lessons in terms of this value that you have on pricing, certification, and especially customer narrative for this new capture from air route?
Yeah, that's also a really interesting and hot topic questions, which also we have the samples available just around the corner here. But yeah, our approach to this ISCC mass balance approach is ABC, atmospheric for the atmospheric carbon, B for Born Renewables, which is our trademark for renewable bio-based polyolefins, and the C for the circular economy. And we see that all these they are acting as a complementary solutions, supporting each other on a market. And as you said, atmospheric carbon is really a novel technology. So we are in a starting phase. We see enormous amount of interest on the market in end users. But also, as you have seen some of my presentation, I always highlight that sustainability needs to be also sustainable economically. So, of course, the economics of scale, they come to stream on one point. Atmospheric carbon capture, different names for the same topic. It's really a novel technology. So it is growing, and we see that basically there's a lot of interest on that, but the understanding of the market is not yet there. Some of the front runners, they are super aware and super knowledgeable already with this. But we see that basically the availability is growing the same time while the knowledge of the end users is growing to this.
That's also a good segue. I don't even need my paper here because now you talked about scalability and so on. So let's move to Paula and go really into industrial scale. So LyondellBasell circular and low carbon solution business targets, don't name me on that, but I think like 2 million metric tons until 2030 of renewable-based polymers. That's quite a lot, building around European and US hubs. So how do you actually want to translate that scale into, we've heard the price premiums, volume growth, also risk mitigation for your clients?
Thank you. So maybe I will start with what you first mentioned. To build a profitable and circular low carbon solution business is in the core of the strategy of LyondellBasell. That's something that we decided years ago and we wanted to continue. So first, C-suite commitment, we have it, we live it, and we continue to breathe it. Second important point, what is the value for the customer? What do they need? What do they, what is their spirit of that brand? What is the commitments that they have made? And they are very, very different. Even within one brand owner, very different value propositions within the brand. So I completely agree that to get to these details is very important to monetize it, to understand and to think what is the solution that is the best suitable for the customer. And of course, we are an industry of scale, right? We produce a lot of plastics in the world, and we have become very effective at producing them the way traditionally it works, right? So we have to ensure that we will enable this scale also for the future circular and sustainable economy around plastics. It's going to take us time. The value propositions are difficult sometimes to explain. I will recognize that. The mass balance ISCC plus carbon capture might be confusing, but I think the industry is learning, is trying to understand what is the best way of describing these solutions. And therefore, in LyondellBasell, we have what we said, the integrated ecosystems. And it's not only us, but we understand very well that we have to be close to the feedstock. So if it's the case of mechanical recycling, we have to invest in waste management. We have to ensure that we have the right plastic waste that will be enabled to be converted through the different technologies to create a product. Of course, I'm talking about developing a full new value chain. That requires investments across the industry, right? So I think we all need to have our returns on investments, and that's why we are doing it, because we do believe that companies have been committed to buy more recycled plastic, to decrease the carbon footprint of their products, and we know that this takes time. So we are building the infrastructure to enable that this transition will happen.
So concerning those returns, and then being very practical, I know that you have the Circuline Recover, which is mechanical grade, you have the Circuline Revive, which is advanced molecular grade, and then you have the Circuline Renew, which is biocircular. So if you now compare these three, where do you see like the strongest traction at the moment? In which sectors or product applications? And what are the technical enablers for this traction?
I mean, I think if you think about all the plastics we supply around all the segments, I think in packaging, there has been for years now a commitment to move to a circular packaging. So the voluntary commitments around FMCG's Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that has been a driver of demand and interest for these products. And on top of it, we talked about this morning the regulatory framework, right? So packaging is a place where we focus very much for these solutions. I think then the packaging contains different things. And so what we think is that it's important to understand what is the technical requirements for this packaging, and then you can offer different technologies to get to those products. So we talk about mechanical recycling for the shampoo bottle this morning. We talk about chemical recycling for the pouch of a food, for example. And then the bio is when customers are really committed to decrease the carbon footprint, right? So if you want to make a strong message to say this packaging, I'm changing language, sorry. This packaging is gonna be much lower carbon footprint, then you use the bio-based, right? So I think packaging is a segment where we see as an industry is very important for plastics, of course, as you know very well. We have a solution for end-of-life plastics. We have them. We have the technology. We all are presenting. So I think that's very important, which maybe it was a little bit the challenges of those materials. So I think that's how I see that is the first focus. Then you have related consumer goods, where the consumer end user wants to feel something that they are doing around sustainability, so that's also a place to focus. But I think you also have to take into account that these value propositions command a premium. And so you have to be very specific on the product you choose. If you take the most commoditized project that you have in your portfolio and you wanted to get value out of it by adding cost to it, maybe it's going to be very difficult, right? So I think, as you said as well, it's important that we show proof points, that we tell everybody that this is possible, and then let's take the long-hanging fruit, if you want, and then we will go to the scale, because we are building the scale. It will come, but it's important that people understand that.
So from these performance aspects, now also really going down to the factory floor, Frank, you're actually dealing with designing then these products and helping companies to find the right materials. So from your development work, which three technical factors most often kill actually this business case for circular grades? Is it things like contaminants, performance, processing limitations, or regulatory constraints, or appearance? And how early should suppliers and developers engage engineers also in the strategical work to position such circular business cases?
Yes, first of all, it's quite simple. It's the order. If a plastic smells, no one will use a circular grade material, because then the discussion about health and harmful substances will begin. So that's absolutely unnecessary. So producers have to provide a material without odor, so nearly without odor. So second point is to have consistent mechanical properties, consistent processability. That's very important. The material properties should be as near as possible near virgin material. So that's the best way to provide sustainable materials, to provide circular grades then. And the third one are regulatories. So that's very important to meet all regulatory requirements. So it's a bit depending on the industry. If you have food contact material, if you have packaging, so that's very important. If you're providing materials in automotive industry, so you have to check all this regulatory information. And the most common mistakes companies make are to begin with virgin materials, with evaluating. And later on, they are deciding, okay, now we plan to use circular grades. So, and these materials often are a little bit different regarding processability, for example. And that's a problem. So you have to requalify the material again. So first the virgin material, and the second time the circular grade. So, and you can avoid this if you start with the circular grade. So that's quite easy.
Okay. So if an OEM wants to pay for circular content, what would you say are the must-haves in the specifications, like tolerances, additives, and so on? And what types of working modes or rituals would you suggest to develop then these solutions for the OEMs when you know really that they should pay for this new solution?
Yeah, as mentioned before, the most important point is to have a consistent material quality. It's important for the customer, it's important for the processor, so you have to have a reliable material with which you can calculate. Yeah. So you have experience with virgin material, and if you work with circular grades, it should be nearly the same. So that's very important. And yes, as I mentioned before, you have to qualify this material first. So. And I would like to recommend, if you're working with a circular grade material, you should check as many samples as possible. So because these circular grades have a lot of larger tolerance. So and therefore it's very important to check, for example, different viscosities of a circular grade. Not only one sample, best 5-6 samples, and then you become a little bit more familiar with the circular grades.
And then also integrate the OEM in an early stage also for the qualification.
That's absolutely
process.
a must-have. Yeah. So
Okay, I'm looking at the time. We've now had a nice journey from high-level commitment to innovation to scaling, and then really the hands-on dirty work in the factory floor. We still have 1 minute, 2 minutes for some questions. So please keep it to maybe 1 sentence, and then we keep the answers also to 1 sentence. Then we can have more. Is there any questions from the audience?